What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Scouting Combine here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. So glad you guys are able to join us. Big shout out to the Miami Heat last night. As you know, Brady, Ethan, Greg have got you guys covered on the Heat, 5 on the floor as well. Make sure you guys check us out from Brady's Breakdowns, which was posted later on the channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Miami Dolphins linebackers, the position preview, and some of the big names that are in the linebacker core. Today, I have a special friend joining us. We have Ryan Roberts from Rise and Draft joining us. Ryan, how you doing today, my guy? I think you're muted, my guy.
Am I muted still?
There we go.
I'm sorry. Someone tried calling me while I was on here, but I appreciate you, man, as always, for having me on. Unfortunately, if you're watching this, I am live from the hallway of my bedroom because my daughter took a very strange nap schedule today. But I appreciate you for having me on, man. Linebackers is always my thing, so thank you so much.
Of course, man. You know, Drew, I've seen the pics you post with you and Juliet. It's just so cute and awesome to see. It's fun being a new dad. I know your schedule's always a little bit messed up with the kids and stuff, but how are you maintaining that balance?
It's good, man. It's good. Luckily, you know, working from home now, if there's anything that's pertinent to Jules and, you know, if she's sick or anything like that, it's pretty flexible and everything. So, you know, she's in there. She just turned 16 months. So she's in the little mood of saying no to everything right now, which is always fun, but it's good, man. I wouldn't trade it for anything right now.
He says no to everything except for Notre Dame football. That's what it's going to be soon.
Well, no, it's no to everything except for if she wants more food, and then it's yes, I would love more food.
That is amazing to hear because now, like, kids and toddlers, they hate eating food, but I guess it's much different for Jules then, huh?
Yeah, no, she has a great love for food, to say the least. She is the least picky person I've ever met, and I know that's going to change at some points. But right now, she's all happy right now with food time right now. So.
That is perfect. I love food too. But speaking about eating, today we're talking about Dolphins linebackers, and they've been eating up and racking up a lot of tackles a bit lately. Just on the precipice, before we get to each player, what do you know about this Miami Dolphins linebacker group as a whole?
Well, I know there's speed, right? There's an injection of speed. I was a fan of Jerome Baker when he was at Ohio State, and I know that he brings a lot of speed to the table. Drafting Channing Tindall, he brings a lot of speed to the table. Otherwise, I feel like it is just an overall. I wish that there was a little more attention to improving the linebacker group this offseason, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be kind of a middle-of-the-pack group because I think there's going to be some speed that's going to, you know, play a lot of dividends on the second level, but if anybody's ever seen any evaluations I've done of linebacker, I'm pretty critical of bad eye discipline and, you know, poor run fits. And I feel like that's a little prevalent in some of the linebackers on the roster. But, you know, it's going to be a fast group, if nothing else, for the most part.
It is a very, very fast group. And speaking about Jerome Baker, we're going to go ahead and start off with him. Now, in 2021, he may have started off the season slow, kind of like the rest of the unit, but he came on by the end of the year. And when he was more so being used on the edge, he was creating a lot of good pressure that helped him lead to career-high 15 quarterback hits, 5.5 sacks. And this was the first year of him signing a sizable contract extension. It was nice to see him that it wasn't too fat, but he was still happy from the big payday. And something I tweeted a little bit earlier on before the show, in true pass rush sets, Jerome Baker was the 5th highest graded linebacker by PFF. He had a grade of 86.2. Pass rush rise overall, taking into everything from stand-up, from Mike, Will, and Sam as well. He had a grade of 76.2. It seems to me more so he's a pass rushing linebacker than an overall, versatile linebacker that can do everything.
Yeah, no, he's an attack style linebacker, right? Like I mentioned before, his biggest pluses to the game is that he has an energetic style, he's incredibly fast, and he has great closing speed. You know, and that's I think that kind of parlays to the success as a blitzer. You know, the ability to close in on quarterbacks very quickly is obviously prevalent in his game. I know he's kind of a feast or famine type of run defender. You know, he's going to make some plays in the backfield. He's going to make plays in the line of scrimmage, and then he's just going to kind of get out leveraged at the point of attack because he's not the longest linebacker of all time, right? Like, he's not the biggest guy. That's why he's more of a Will type than a Mike type. He's not going to, you know, take blocks on, at the point of attack and be an incredibly physical player. He needs to use his speed to play underneath of blockers, play over top of blockers. Like, that's kind of his skill set. So there's going to be some feast or famine to him as a run defender. But I really do think if you have a good Mike linebacker with Jerome Baker playing Will, I think he can make a lot of plays because that speed immediately pops off film. He is a very, very explosive linebacker on the second level.
The other thing about Jerome Baker, you talked about the feast or famine, especially on run defense. He was the lowest graded Dolphins linebacker in run defense. He had 365 snaps in run defense, about a 13.2% missed tackle rate, and really only 13 run stops. He had 23 tackles, and he had a grade of 42.4, which is near bottom of the pack in run defense. How do you think, maybe coupled with that speed, besides having a true Mike backer with Jerome Baker, how can he improve?
Well, you have to cut down the missed tackle percentage, right? Like, I mean, I don't think he's ever going to be a guy again that's going to play consistently at the point of attack, which is not in the cards because even if he bulks up a little bit, he just doesn't have the greatest length, and that's not his style, right? But you can control the missed tackles to a degree. You need to be a little more disciplined in your fits, in your angles that you take. The problem is with Jerome Baker is that we talked about his style, right? It's energetic, it's fast, but sometimes that makes you come out of control a little bit. He's not the longest guy of all time, so the range is going to be a little limited at points just because he doesn't have the biggest tackle radius of all time. But if he plays more controlled, if he plays with better angles, if he's able to get in a good, proper position tackling, he's going to cut down naturally just on those missed tackles, right? So I think that the point of emphasis for him, not necessarily to change how he plays, but to just be a little more of a consistent football player in his approach to the game. If he changes the approach, just the angles, the discipline in that regard, I think if you just cut down on the missed tackle percentage, you're going to take the good with the bad with it, right? Like, there's going to be some times where he just isn't able to get to a play. There's going to be points where he gets overwhelmed at the point of attack. Those things are going to be always on film, but you need to cut down on the missed tackles. To be a space linebacker, a guy that has that range that he has with the speed he has, you can't miss a ton of tackles in space, and that's kind of what has plagued him over the years overall.
Of course, we hope Jerome Baker is listening in, and it will surely help now that he's got a good Mike backer coming through the draft. And we'll talk a little bit of that linebacker later on in the show. In coverage, Baker, 450 coverage snaps itself, most of them in man coverage. Around 37% of his snaps were in man coverage. He had a coverage grade of 64.1. Now, coupled with this speed, he can run with running backs. He can run with a little bit smaller tight ends as well. And we've seen him bat some passes. Well, when talking about eye discipline and how he can, go hip for hip with these running backs and tight ends, what do you see out of Baker in man coverage?
Yeah, I mean, I think man coverage is always going to be a solid aspect for him because, like you said, he's an athletic kid, and he might be a little bit of an undersized linebacker, but matching up against running backs and slot receivers and some smaller tight ends, like you said, I mean, it won't be a huge mismatch potential. Like, you're not going to put him against Rob Gronkowski in man coverage, obviously, with the size discrepancy, but he can do the job against a certain body type. So I think that the athleticism, he can match up. He's quick twitch. He can match up in man coverage. I think the thing that you need to kind of press with the Jerome Baker is, and this is more to eye discipline side of things, is zone coverage, right? Landmark coverage, finding your spots in that zone and being able to close windows quickly. I think that's where he struggles a little bit. And I think that's honestly, Hussam, I think there's a big misnomer that, like, if you're this great athlete, you're a plus player in coverage. And that is not how it works, man. Like, Devin Bush has not been good in coverage. Devin White has not been good in coverage. These really good athletic linebackers tend to kind of overplay their athleticism and don't trust their eyes as much in coverage. So I think it's more just about trusting your eyes and being a little more of a proactive player versus a reactive player, which is hard for a defensive player in general, because you're naturally a little reactive because the offense kind of dictates what's happening in front of you. But to be proactive, to understand what route concepts are developing and just be a hair faster in your diagnostic skills, that's where that plus comes from an eye discipline perspective. He's always going to match up well in certain situations, man-to-man coverage. I think the bigger emphasis for him is to clean up some of his eye discipline and zone coverage, understand where he's dropping, understand what's developing in front of him, so he can be a little more of a proactive player.
Now, do you think this has to do with the league more so being geared towards play action passing? You know, the most explosive NFL offensives have basically boomed on play action passes, either whether it be from single back, from shotgun itself. How do these linebackers now try not to be reactive?
It's tough, man. It's not easy. You know, I'm saying this like you have to be more proactive versus reactive, and it's not easy in today's game. You know, when I played, it was, I mean, your play action was literally a fake 24 and then it's a straight drop back play action, right? But like this game is just so different with the elements of the outside zone and the RPO where things are moving laterally more than they are moving linearly now. So it's tough. It's not easy, right? Because it's not even so much play action. It's the direction aspect of it, right? Like you're moving laterally, and then all of a sudden, here comes a tight end cutting underneath, you know, of the quarterback behind the line of scrimmage, and you're just hitting a little, you know, tight end dump off, or kind of like some cross zone action, right? And it's not easy. It's not, but the thing that always comes down to it is that there are tendencies that teams show on film, right? And if you're able to just kind of diagnose in this situation, in this formation, these are the plays they like, you can kind of cut down the guessing game a little bit, right? And that's the thing that you need to figure out is offensive coordinators are smart, but if you can kind of hone in on a certain few amount of things that teams like to do out of a certain formation or a certain situation, that's when you start guessing as much as you are starting to be more of a proactive football player.
Of course. Now, as we move on from Jerome Baker, we go to former Wisconsin Badger. Andrew Van Ginkel comes from that great Wisconsin defense that has produced a lot of good linebackers over the years. Vince Beagle, Andrew Van Ginkel, Leo Chenal for one in this draft as well. He had a quietly impressive sophomore campaign, and he did it all as a linebacker, even sometimes lining up as an edge rusher. He recorded a career high in tackles, which is 71, career high in quarterback hits, which was 20, and 7 passes defended, while adding 4 sacks and a forced fumble to his resume. I do think he definitely benefited from being around a great group of guys in the front 7 that helped elevate his games. But season stat-wise overall, he had 51 solo tackles, which was first on the team and in the top half of all linebackers and edge rushers in the NFL. 6 sacks as well, and he played less than 50% of his snaps. When I look at his pass rush and run defense grade by PFF, he had a 70.1 pass rush grade and 71.7 rush grade, which kind of tells me, just on an analysis perspective of things, he's pretty balanced overall as a linebacker. When you watch him in Wisconsin and how he translates his skill sets to the Dolphins, is it a good fit for AVG to develop or blossom even more next season?
Yeah, I really like the skill set that Van Ginkel brings to the game. I mean, when you're talking about the Wisconsin system, that's a true 3-4 system under Jim Leonard that he played in. It is, you know, he's the kind of the Sam Backer in the system where he's going to play in the line of scrimmage a lot. He's going to pass rush a ton, but he would also drop into space and he would do some things in coverage. I think that's why you're seeing the success he's had with the Dolphins, because he's a really versatile player. He was a good athlete, tested as a good athlete coming out. He's got length. He kind of checks a lot of boxes. What who he reminds me of is, I remember when Connor Barwin went over to the Philadelphia Eagles, and Connor Barwin had one really big sack season. It was like I think like 14 and a half sacks or something. But the season that he was actually the best for the Eagles, he only had like 6 or 7 sacks, but he had pass breakups. He had more tackles. He did everything and all around, and he did a lot of things that went underrated, to be honest, because he did a lot of the dirty work. You know, he was playing over tight ends, was working in pass coverage, dropping to flat, dropping zone curl. Like, he was doing a lot of different things for the Eagles in that season that he had. That was probably his best one. And I think it's similar to what Van Ginkel does. You know, his stats might never, and you said, you know, 51 solo tackles is a nice number, the sack number, the pressure number, like those things are all nice, especially in the limited snaps that he had at times. But I think the one thing is that I think that he might be a better player than the stats will ever truly indicate. He does a lot of the dirty work for the Dolphins, and he can fit into a 4-3 as a Sam Backer that can play in some underfronts on the line of scrimmage. He can work as a 3-4, as a true Sam, as a stand-up rusher. He can do a lot of different things, and I think that's what you're seeing out of Andrew Van Ginkel. It's the versatility aspect that brings his value to a football team.
Right, and look, he's got the motor to tally those stats with effort. And as you said, he does a lot of that dirty work. He attacks the quarterbacks, does those pressure. He can get into the backfield, cover tight ends, linebackers as well. And the big thing with him is space. He's very, very good in space, and especially when I watched on film, if he was being used as that scrape linebacker, he would consistently read the quarterback or the running back if they were running an RPO or a read option, just a simple play action pass. He would go ahead and crash by the edge or twist inside, stunt inside to gain some type of pressure or into the backfield. How do you think overall, like as a young linebacker, like you are a recruiting analyst for Sports Illustrated for Notre Dame itself, you recruit, you look at these recruits, you analyze draft prospects kind of like how I do. How do you think, these college kids can mold their game for a scrape linebacker like Andrew Van Ginkel?
Well, I think there's a couple different types of players that you're referring to in that situation, right? Like for the objective of an Andrew Van Ginkel being more of a on-ball type of Sam backer, having length at the point of attack is tremendous for him, right? Because he's able to kind of out-leverage blocks and play over top of blocks and do some things over the top to just kind of set an edge, for lack of a better term, because it's a little different. But that length is what really pops for him. But then when we talked about a Jerome Baker, he can also make plays in pursuit as well, but his is more relied upon speed. But for a guy like an Andrew Van Ginkel, as far as being a pursuit-style player or being a player that can play over top, it's going to be more about aiming points and more about the length that he has. You have to take good angles, you have to attack the proper leverage, and you have to play over blocks or play under blocks depending on what the situation is. And I think that Van Ginkel was – if I give any – well, I'll say this. I always have kind of a crush on some of these Wisconsin players that come out because they are coached very well. Jim Leonard and that system, they understand how to play leverage. They understand how to play in a team discipline type of style. So I think that's one thing is people were kind of I think they were kind of surprised that Van Ginkel was as good an athlete as he tested as for a second because they're just like he kind of just does a little bit of the dirty work, but that's more just based upon what the system asks of him to do. So I think it's more attention to detail with Andrew Van Ginkel combined with the fact that he has good length and he has a good athletic profile.
Of course. Now, as we move on from AVG or D Ginkel, as a lot of people like to call it down here in Miami, go to Elandon Roberts, former New England Patriots, one of the Flores guys that stuck around this year, signed another one-year deal. In his second year in Miami, he played the highest amount of snaps in his career, 621 snaps, set him up to a career high in tackles, 83, and 2 forced fumbles. He's more of that thumper, that old-school run-stopping linebacker. But he's made a bit of his name for himself in 6 seasons. He was re-signed as a free agent this year, and he's brought back without the Flores connection. When I look at his run defense, sometimes it's hit or miss. He lowers that hit stick, but the running back does not come down. Sometimes it's like, holy crap, this hit was absolutely insane. The thing is, with as many snaps he had in run defense, 321, his grade was a hair better than Jerome Baker's. He had a 55.6 grade, 35 tackles, 26 assisted tackles, and a 20.8 miss percentage, which was worse than Jerome Baker. When you watch Roberts, how can you basically clean that up?
Man, it's going to be a little tough for him, man, to be honest with you, because, I mean, he is in the right system, in that New England Patriots system. It makes him look like I think he's a better player than he actually is, to be honest with you, right? I think that you have that even now in New England with Jawan Bentley, who's a solid player, but, like, out of New England, is he never going to be as good? Because the thing that New England always does is they ask the guys to do just what they're good at. And what Elandon Roberts is good at is that he's a battering ram, man. That's like why you see him sometimes line up at fullback in some gimmicky, goal line situations, right? Like he is a head of steam, put my head down, fill a gap, take on a block. And that's all well and good. But the fact of the matter is that he's not a great athlete. He's an okay athlete, but he doesn't have great length. He's going to miss tackles just because he's not going to be in the proper position sometimes. So he's a guy for me, Hussam, that I think is going to be about just everything has to be perfect all the time, right? Like his angles have to be perfect. He's got to take on the proper leverage, phenomenally well all the time. Because when Jerome Baker makes a mistake, he can make up for it because he has speed. Elandon Roberts just kind of has some limitations from an athleticism perspective. But I think I think Miami Dolphins brought him back more to be the veteran presence to get somebody else ready, right? Like I think that's kind of his role in this defense. But for him, his immediate impact on the team, he needs to just play more control and more to his disciplines because he doesn't have a lot of athleticism to back it up.
Right, and as a pass rusher, he was close to 300 snaps as a pass rusher. 70 grade on PFF, 74 around a 75 in a true pass rush set himself. And when you talk about angling, I saw it a little bit earlier on in the year for run stops, man coverage, and zone coverage as well. He is 2 steps slow than where he needs to be. He's not sometimes in the right spot as well. And as you said, it's not enough for him. Everything has to be perfect for Elandon Roberts to make a true impact. And I do think, yes, he was brought in to be that veteran presence. Could he be the guy to teach the next up-and-coming linebacker, which we'll talk about, to be a true run-stopping guy? Could he be the guy to teach these younger guys like a Duke Riley, like a Sam Eguaveon, like a Brennan Scarlett, how to properly, set the edge and run defense, how to go up those A gaps, B gaps, and C gaps as well, which it's going to be fun to see the development of some of these guys that we're going to talk about now. Like we're going on to Duke Riley. He played in Philadelphia. You've seen him play in Philly. What are your initial thoughts on Duke Riley?
He's a great athlete. He's a really good athlete. I mean, go back to LSU, man. The kid could run for days. It was just all more about rawness as his ability to take on blocks and play through contact, play through traffic. And he was kind of, I guess is a good word, right? Like, I mean, he's running for days and he's covering a lot of ground, but it just doesn't seem like it needs to be that way at times, right? And that's just kind of who Duke Riley is. And I think he's played okay in spurts over the last couple of years, but he just hasn't lived up to the athletic expectations, which is why he's more of a depth piece at this point. But the things that Duke Riley does bring to you outside of the defensive side is he's going to be an excellent special teamer, right? Like he's got solid length and he's an incredibly explosive player, and that's why he's going to make a roster and be a backup player for the Dolphins.
Right. He had a pretty average season as a rotational linebacker, finished the year with 26 tackles and played only 21% of defensive snaps. And look, he did most of his work on special teams and was solid in that role. The one thing which really got me was Duke Riley's coverage grade overall, 81.2 in man coverage. In zone coverage, he was a 58.6. And as you said, with zone, it's more about spacing. You have to be more aware. Riley does not necessarily have that awareness in zone coverage or in those short zones. He can run with people in man coverage overall, and I saw it last year. Now, with Riley, the issue is there's a lot of linebackers for the Miami Dolphins that we haven't even counted, like Brennan Scarlett, like Calvin Munson, Sam Eguaveon as well. It's hard for him to even get a shot to have above 30% or more. Is Riley just that special teamer guy that you want to keep on the roster, or can there be more of him this season?
Well, I think special teams is going to be the big selling point, but I think one thing that you just mentioned was, if he has ability to play in man-to-man coverage, then there may be some package opportunities for him to match up against certain tight ends or bigger slots or whatever it is. So I think you can find a role for him. I just don't think that he's ever going to be a player against the run that you're going to be consistently enthralled with being on the field. But he's going to have a roster spot, in my opinion, when it's finally said and done, because he's going to be able to play special teams and he has those athletic traits. But if you can take advantage of his man instincts or man skills in coverage, then there might be a spot for a sub-package type of role.
We're going to go on to the last two before we get on to the Dolphins' first draft pick in the 4th round this last draft. Sam Eguaveon and Brennan Scarlett. Now, Eguaveon didn't play a ton of defense as he took part in just 16% of snaps. But like Duke Riley, he played a huge role on special teams. former CFL star's biggest highlight came against the New England Patriots Week 18 as he grabbed a lateral ball out of the air and returned it to the end zone to solidify Miami's defeat of the Patriots in Week 18. Brennan Scarlett, he's that third tier of the Dolphins linebacker crew that spends majority of his time in special teams. Recorded 1 quarterback hit, 1 pass defended on the year. And it honestly could have been more if he didn't miss 4 games due to a knee injury that landed him on IR. Now, run defense-wise, Eguaveon and Scarlett are a little bit more so on the high side along with Calvin Munson, but it is in limited snaps. When you have guys like these who play primarily special teams, and you play in those sub packages or those heavy sets where you know a team is running, how big of a luxury is it to have these kinds of guys that can play the run well? Oh, I think we might have lost Ryan there a little bit, but once we try to go ahead and get him back, I do think it's pretty much spectacular to have a guy like a Sam Eguaveon or Brennan Scarlett that can play the run really, really well. Eguaveon had a 62 run defense grade, and he is back because he had a little bit of Wi-Fi connectivity issues. It happens, man. It happens.
It's awful, man. I hate it so much. We live in a world where we need it, and it just messes up with me all the time at the wrong possible times. I hate it so much. My apologies. I really apologize for that.
It's all good, and it happens. And I was just basically talking like how crucial it is to have guys like Eguaveon and Scarlett who have good run defense grades with such limited snaps in those heavy sub packages that your opposing team is going to run.
Yeah, well, I think the big plus for both of them, Hussam, is we just talked a little bit about Duke Riley. I think both these guys are going to play a lot on special teams. Like you said, Eguaveon has played a lot in the past, and he's a kid that I think could play a little spots both at Mike and Will a little bit. And Brennan Scarlett's like that true Sam backer that's going to back up Van Ginkel type. I mean, that's what he played when he was at Sanford as well. And he's kind of a glue guy, Scarlett. Like he's physical. He's going to do some good things. There's a little bit of athletic limitations, but he's just going to kind of be in the right spot most of the time. And Eguaveon, like you said, from his CFL days, man, the kid is strong, physical, and he can run a little bit. So these guys, I think, are going to be really good special team pieces, and they're going to have good depth. I think that they're really good depth players, if nothing else, for the team.
Of course, now as we go on to the former Georgia product, Channing Tindall, the 4th-round pick for the Miami Dolphins. Why don't you give a brief breakdown on your scouting report on Channing Tindall for us, Ryan?
Sure. Yeah, I actually liked him more than Quay Walker. They went in the first round, to be honest with you. I think he's quick and aggressive, incredibly fast. He ran in the 4.4s at the combine, man. Like his kid he's a kid that could definitely play Will, but I think he can play Mike as well because he's kind of got that hammer to him, right? Like he's going to get downhill. He's going to be physical. He didn't play a ton at Georgia. He never started a game while he was at the University of Georgia, but he played behind guys like Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker and Monty Rice, and there are some good linebackers in front of him, of course, on the inside for Georgia. So he made an impact, though, every time he played. He's aggressive, he's fast, he's physical. The biggest questions I have for him is, one, he hasn't played a ton. His eye discipline isn't the best at times, right? Like sometimes there's some bad reads and some misreads, and those are things that can kind of be knocked out of him a little bit. But I think playing with a veteran group with Elandon and Jerome and trying to bring him along a little bit slowly, I think it's going to be big for him. But he's a quick, explosive, athletic linebacker that I think does have massive upside.
Now, before we profile and detail Channing Tindall a little bit more, just a big shout out to one of our sponsors for the show, Prize Picks. Register on Prize Picks and use the promo code 5 to get a 100% match on your deposit. Again, the code is 5. Make sure you guys go on Prize Picks and use the code 5. Now, when we're talking about Channing Tindall, yes, he wasn't used as much at Georgia. But Georgia, when we're talking about this linebacker unit last year with Tindall, Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean, and on the edges with a Trayvon Walker and the insides with Jordan Davis as well, they used their linebackers more so last year than in 2020. And It's a cool stat I got here, and I'm gonna rattle off some numbers. Might be a little bit confusing, but it's a little bit easy to explain. So on first and second down, when calling pressure or simulated pressures in 2020, which was at a 25% rate, it was a 57% frequency for Georgia's linebackers on first and second down to blitz or pressure, compared to last year, it was a 77% chance on first and second downs that the linebackers such as Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean, or Channing Tindall would be blitzing, and that would happen at a 53% rate. On third down, it was 61% in 2020, but 83% last year. And that's because of Tindall's quickness. That's because of Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker's quickness as well. Those guys were explosive, and a large part is that this kind of fits Tindall's MO here in Miami, because this is how Miami dials up these exotic blitzes or those cover zero looks. Like we've seen the pass rush grades for Andrew Van Ginkel, Elandon Roberts, and Jerome Baker. And I do think Tindall will be on par with them that first season. Like I have a belief that he's going to compete for first team snaps with Elandon Roberts and Jerome Baker as the Mike backer. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, no, I think that he's probably the most talented linebacker on the roster now, in my opinion, right? And I think that there is, if you are going to be an attack style system, I think that's going to help him a lot early, because you're going to take a lot of the thinking out for him, right? Like you're going to tell him, this is where you're attacking, this is your leverage point, and go get the football. And I think that that's the best parts of what Channing Tindall does right now. And I think that he can do things. I mean, I think there could be a good rotation, honestly, because like I said, I think he could play Will. I think he could play Mike with the physicality he plays with. What I know, though, is that he's going to fly around. He's going to make some mistakes, but he's going to make a lot of plays for it, too. So I think he could play early. I think he's going to play a very attack style, type of situation. And I think that you saw it at Georgia last year. They had three big bodies up front, and then they had a bunch of really fast players in the second level. Channing Tindall brings a lot of possibilities to a defense, because he has just incredible athletic profile.
I mean, it's one of the, this is just a good philosophy for Tindall as well, because and general manager Chris Greer said it himself, and when he watched Tindall on film, it's kind of like the exact same way they use most of these linebackers in Miami. And Tindall said it himself, when he watched the film on Miami, it's a talented defense, and how they use other linebackers and how he was used at Georgia. He was used as a spy. He was used as a blitzing linebacker, used to cover backs. Just a lot of the ways that are kind of similar to what Miami asked their linebackers to do. He did the same exact thing in Georgia. So it's just about meshing those skills and just playing in the NFL overall. What do you think are some of Tindall's projections for next season?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you need to get him involved in the rotation, right? I don't know if I would like to think at some point in the season he's going to take over for Elandon Roberts as the starting Mike linebacker, and then you're going to kind of get Elandon Roberts as more of the rotational player. But I think early on, especially, I think Tindall needs a cross train between Mike and Will, and I think he needs to move all over the place. I think you need to use him, especially in space situations on third downs, and use his blitzing prowess and use that aggressiveness. So if we're talking stat projections, I'd say he might have 60 to 70 tackles at the end of the season, and he might have 4 to 6 sacks, somewhere in that ballpark, and have some pressures, because I think that you're going to use the best of what he does. And right now, the best of what he does is to be aggressive and be fast.
Of course, Ryan, and thank you so much for coming on. I'm guessing his Wi-Fi might have kicked him out as well. It does live a little bit up north as well. But thank you guys for watching as well. It looks like he's back in as well. But Ryan, before your Wi-Fi kicks you out again, what's on deck for you for this upcoming football season?
I mean, we're going to be doing the NFL drafts up at riseofdraft.com. I've been posting some verified age measurements for some prospects this morning. So if you are an avid fan of the NFL draft, you can check out the website, and we have kind of a one-stop shop for everything you need on there. We'll do the NFL Prospect podcast. We're already getting into summer scouting right now. And then if you're a recruiting guy as well, I also do some recruiting stuff for irishbreakdown.com, mostly focusing on the Notre Dame recruits that are on the board. But, if you just want to talk recruiting, I'll also be available there for college football side of things as well.
Notre Dame people aren't very welcome on the network, as we're more Miami Hurricanes fans as well, and a big Miami Hurricanes network.
Catholics versus convicts, man. Bring it back again.
Of course, man. And as you guys know, my big resume, I also do the socials for the NFL Prospects podcast with Joe, Ryan, and Alex do as well. Fun stuff planned this summer as well. Can't wait for college football to get back. But before you guys leave us, make sure to drop in a thumbs up, like as well, and donate to the channel as well. Not only to me, but to the other guys on the 5 Reasons Sports Network as well. Tomorrow's a very big day for the network, as it is Game 7. Boston Celtics, Miami Heat in Miami. Ethan Brady will be there on site for Game 7. We'll have pregame, in-game, and post-game coverage and analysis. Again, make sure you guys subscribe, like to the network. Make sure you guys like, share, and donate to the Scouting Combine podcast. As always, guys, fins up, baby.